Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Peripheral. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, first and foremost, we find out more about the Grace and Alita situation, which makes her death even sadder because it's like Alita kind of put her in this awkward position. She inadvertently gave you access to all of this. Because we still don't know. Well, I was about to say, no, I have to take that back because I was like, how did Alita find out about the stubs and everything? Anyway, it's like, right, it had to be like Lev because they were the ones backing her choice. But it's like, I guess because of the wealth connection, maybe Alita's always been in their orbit to some extent because she had a job at the Research Institute. Not unless they purposely got her the job at the Research Institute for her to be their insider. But whatever the case may be, her and Grace had a thing. So you're like, oh, it makes that even sadder because it's like, oh, you kind of got your ex killed. But it's like, yeah, she kind of broke your heart. So you're like, yeah, it's all under the bridge. I'm going to use you. Whatever consequences befall you, that's it. Which actually kind of plays a little interestingly into this thing that Wilf says to Flynn at the end of the episode, not knowing like the weight of your actions, like the weight of the consequences. It's like, yeah, it's easier to do something without thinking about how heavy the consequences are going to be. Maybe it never crossed her mind to think like, hey, Grace is going to like suffer. Or maybe she thought like, hey, Grace is actually kind of part of the problem. Like she's a part of this and she has no issue with it because basically Alita got information, like got her to show her like, hey, show me what you're working on. Because they had this whole conversation about like everything that they went through. And I love that conversation when Grace was like, oh yeah, like the AI therapist was like, we had our issues. The reason why we didn't work is because you're a bad good girl and I'm a good bad girl. Because it's like, yeah, you present like a bad girl on the outside, but you're actually a big softie on the inside. While I'm reverse. And I didn't really believe that until later on. I was like, oh, I can see the presenting to be a good girl, but being a bad girl on the inside. I was like, I could totally see that for Grace now. But like I said, it was this conversation where Alita talks about not really understanding people or can't really tell what they're thinking, and Grace was like, well, you talking about empathy? And it's like, for her, because she has the whole models thing, so what she did for Flynn's house, I guess that's her way of kind of connecting with like, you're a means to an end to me, but I'm trying to connect with you and I guess feel something. Because for her, it's like being able to position them into whatever like position you want them in, like with a doll, it makes it easier for her to kind of really get a peek into them. It's like that's how she can understand them, is so by representing them as these toys and these models, it makes it it visually makes it easier for her to dive into it. And right, yes, you're a means to an end, but I also don't want to see you as something callous just to throw away, because she sees how the Research Institute treats people. Because she got to look at, what did they call it? It's the God something. I don't remember what the name of it was that Grace called it, but the thing that they put when Flynn was in that peripheral of Burton, she ended up getting Alita pushed her closer to it. So it becomes this situation of it allows them to have access to everything, and we get into the conversation of the stubs, and it turns out the haptic stuff that Burton and his team has is future technology, just using primitive like technology from 2032 to make. So I was like, interesting. So they were, and so I don't know if Burton's team's the only one that has it, or whether like obviously there might have been other people in the military. I don't know if just their very specific unit has it, but we see like, yeah, it was like Burton and Connor and them. It was on the operation where Connor got hurt. And it's like, yeah, what if someone told them like, hey, the enemy is using these dogs to draw you out? And it's like, well, the person would shoot the dog, just, it's like, yeah, but what if we can make it so that sympathy element of people like really kicks in? It's like, yes, everyone's got their own experience, but it's about flooding them with it. And so in that case, Connor went running out. I don't think that was I think that was kind of the example she was using. I don't know if that exact circumstances is what happened to Connor, or whether it's just a situation, because once again, the whole thing is the rest of the team had intel about it, but they didn't act upon it, or they didn't warn Connor, and he ran out there. So I guess that dog stuff is the intel, because I guess maybe Connor has his own connection with dogs, so he ran ahead and no one warned him about the intel. They kind of brushed it off, because I guess they felt like, oh, there's no way that's real, or I don't know if they ever explained why they never went. I think they probably did, like in episode 1 talked about that. I just don't, it's been obviously a couple weeks, so I don't remember off the top of my head. But Alita's like, stop it. And then Grace is like, no, it's already done. It's already a past thing. But I'm like, Grace's like very dismissive nature of like, yeah, it's whatever. I mean, think about the applications of it. And Alita was kind of disgusted by it. It's like, you're treating, and once again, it's just like how Lev looks at a stub. He made that whole declaration last episode. I'm like, oh my God, what if I could get a cousin who wants to test out his medication? He has to go through all that red tape, legal stuff to, get some medication to the like public. So it's like, hey, why don't we test it out in a stub? Why? Because a stub doesn't matter. That's the whole point of like, hey, get control of this. You'll be able to make your own stub. Because they haven't really talked about, I guess the stubs are just like isolated. Like, yes, they're spreading off into their own time lanes, but I don't know if the stubs are like completely, I mean, I think you can't like, because I guess in my head, I'm almost looking at the stubs as like this isolated time point. Like, it's like, okay, 2032, this particular moment of time is kind of isolated in its own little space. It's not leading into a future timeline of that stub. But I don't know why I thought like that, but I don't know why that was going through my mind. But it's like, yeah, it's got its own like timeline and everything. Because for them, yes, that's the interesting disconnect that I think Grace, as well as the Research Institute as a whole, and Lev have, is like, these people don't matter. They're in a stub. They're in the past, so they're long dead. So it's already happened. 2, we exist. It's a stub, so it definitely doesn't matter because it doesn't affect our future one bit. It doesn't affect our life, so we can do whatever we want to them. Like, their lives don't matter. And so Alita was kind of disgusted by that. Just like, wow. So kind of, and once again, that's why I feel like she might not have as much sympathy towards Grace, because it's like, wow, you are working with this project, you know? But it's like, hey, maybe in the end, she didn't really think that far ahead that Grace would end up getting killed by Charisse like she did. But as they're walking, who do they run into? Mariel. Because at first I was about to, I think it speaks volumes that, well, out of anyone's eye that she could have gotten, she didn't take Grace's eye. She took Mariel's eyes. But I think because like, well, with Grace, it's like maybe Grace is too high up. You want to get someone else, because there's only like 24 people in total who have access to all of that. So Mariel ended up being one of them. And it's like, oh, the reason why Mariel got chosen is because I guess the way she talked down to Alita, but also it's like, you just happen to, because Alita didn't know which of the other, she only knew like Grace, so she didn't know which of the other, like she didn't know which of the other 23 that had access, right? Well, now she met one of them, so it's like, right, this way, because Grace is someone I did care about at one point in time, so using her eye is kind of I would if I needed to, but Mariel presented herself, and I love that whole conversation of like, oh, you have such beautiful eyes. I had to kill for him. Like, oh, I'd kill for eyes like that. I was like, ah. The actress, oh God, I saw her name earlier and I'm blanking on it now. It's Poppy something. I'm so sorry. She does have some very pretty eyes. Because I was looking at photos and stuff like that, and it's like she's got greenish, like yellow, bluish eyes. Like it's like on the edges of her iris, they start off like blue, and then like the closer you get to the pupil, it kind of shifts into like a yellowish light green. Once again, it just also depends on, because if the light hits it the right way, it looks purely like light green, but then like it all kind of looks like all three when you it's just kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, yeah, she has very, very pretty eyes. So I'm a sucker for like what I consider a pretty eye. So regardless, so it's like, yeah, she really does. Either way, so I thought like, okay, so that's the reason why Mariel was chosen, which you do kind of feel bad, but then she's kind of a little uppity and looking down on Alita like, oh, you don't have access to this place, but Grace had to put her in her place, and it's like, yeah, I mean, sadly, both of you are dead, so it's kind of like, the two people Alita's there with are dead now, so kind of giving you that understanding of how this, at least Alita's part in this, because this was a year before Alita disappeared. So this is like, I mean, obviously with something like this, you need to plan that far in advance. But like, yeah, they had to plan this out to the T to really get to where they are. I'm wondering how much Wilf and the others were notified of what she had planned. I mean, that might be also why she's on the lam, because she's trying to avoid both like the Research Institute and left, because she's like, no one should have access to this, because she knows what the neoprims are going to do with it, and well, a neoprim like Lev in particular, but what the neoprims in general will want to do with it, plus what the Research Institute is going to do. It's like, none of them can be trusted, so I think that's why she's completely laying low. And you know, I don't know how well she feels about Wilf, considering how closely tied Wilf and Lev are. You know, it's like obviously he cares more about her, but it's like you're too much in his pocket right now. You're too close to him, and I don't. If I reach out to you, he's gonna be on me in an instant. So she might be avoiding like Wilf as much as possible. Either way, present day, as in 2032 present day, we have the whole situation with Flynn. She gets they do the MRI machine and they scan her, and ultimately it sounds like there's a bacteria in her brain or something like that. Like what she has, it's like right. They're like that's what's causing all this. So part of me is like, well, could that bacteria actually? Because it's like where would she like? It's because it's on a certain part of her brain that like the visuals and stuff like that side of your brain, which I'm like, okay, it makes sense considering like the transfer of data and how you're perceiving everything in the future. It kind of makes sense to be on that part of your brain to some extent. But now part of me is like, well, could it be because Flynn says she doesn't have it. She believes Alita has like what Charisse is looking for, the data. But I'm like, well, it was uploaded because she's like, yeah, I died. And that's why I think what the bacteria is. I think the bacteria is all that code, because what is it? It's a transfer of code. It probably manifested itself. Look at like the closest thing in 2032 they could compare it to, that data transferring on her brain. Maybe it manifests itself and looked like bacteria, but I'm like, because it's such a very specific thing. So I'm like, because it could be like all that data in your brain is probably too much for your brain to handle. So that's probably why Flynn's been having the issues, like especially like with her hand and everything. So it might not, because it doesn't seem like it's the headset, but I think it's specifically the data she absorbed related from like all the stuff Alita had her download, because she thought like, okay, it was in what's his face's stub. Not Stub, the Peripheral that was of Burton that died in episode 1. She thinks it's in that, and that maybe Alita had access to it. I don't think it is. I think it's still inside of Flynn. So that's why, because like Alita never came back for the body, because if it was still in the body, like how would Alita have gotten access to it? It basically downloaded itself in Flynn. They need Flynn. So that's kind of been my theory from the beginning, because I bounced back and forth, but it seems like specifically the bacteria makes me go like, no, it's definitely got to be in Flynn, especially the way Charisse is asking about it. So it's like, but because if it was going to be anywhere, it feels like it would still be on the Burton Peripheral, but it's like, it's not, because obviously Daniel was there, so he would have searched your body and didn't find anything. So either way, with that all happening, there's also bringing in Bob, or Robert. He gets brought into the fold. He's got a bloody past, and it's like, cool, we need a proficient killer like you. Oh, if you don't do this, we're going to kill your daughter. And he found the one guy that like, oh, the only person who knew about my daughter was you, Frank. So yeah, it's kind of messed up. He's got 3 grown kids of his own, but he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, a voice on the phone, they told me either you or me, and I chose me over you, so... And Bob ended up putting everyone down, except for that one son. I love that the one son survived, and he was just like, oh my God, because he found it was such a nuisance. So it's like, right. I mean, the guy's like, yeah, my entire family just died, my brothers and my dad. So I was like, yeah, like you expect him to take it lying down. Luckily, because he was just in the process of pulling out the clip to his gun, so his gun wasn't loaded at the time. But luckily he had the sonic fist thing, so shoots the dude's legs, then shoots him again, and the guy his legs are fucked up, his arm, it looks super fucked up, and it's like, cool, you should have just pretended to be dead, kid, that pride got the best of you, I would have left, and I would have never been the wiser that you were still alive, but hey, it is what it is. You got until me cranking up that car if it still works, and if you can crawl away, then I will let you be, and he's like, my legs don't work. And it's like, yeah, that arm doesn't look good either. Good luck. And guy wasn't able to crawl away, and boop, boop. So, but Robert, I love that call where Robert ends up calling up his daughter and obviously pretending to be like some like insurance company, and his daughter knew exactly what it was. This is like a goodbye. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this or not, because this ain't going to be like some easy pickings. There's always risk in going after whatever hit that person might hit back. So he just cautioned his daughter, and she had to tell him, like, oh, I'm pregnant. And he's like, that's good to know, but you take care and good luck, because he didn't know if he was going to make it out of this. So his whole little setup and wait, and I was like, okay. And when it was Billy Ann, I was like, no, keep driving, Billy Ann, keep driving. He's like, no, I'm good. I know that you're probably good around an engine. She's like, I don't know how to take that as a compliment or insult. He's like, I would never insult a stranger. And it's like, all right. She's like, all right, well, I'll go ahead. I'm like, okay, good. And then she stopped. I was like, Billy Ann, do not reverse. No, Billy Ann. I was like, Billy Ann, stop being a good person. Stop being a good. She's like, I'm gonna check it out. I was like, oh. Crap. But then all of a sudden, like, Burton and Flynn showed up. I was like, oh boy, this is getting complicated. Oh boy, please don't die, Billy Ann. Please don't die. And luckily, the moment he has the sonic fist pulse gun thing or whatever, and he's walking up, I was like, Flynn noticed it because, like, she knows what that is and she sees it and she just turned to Burton, shoot him. What? Shoot him now. So that whole sequence was pretty badass. And luckily, Billy Ann came through with the shotgun. She's like, you willing to do this? Blasted him. But it's like, yeah, like the way Burton had hit him, I was like, motherfucker's wearing a vest. So he came well equipped. I don't know if they gave him the heads up about it, like he was going after him. Well, because he needed to know the who and when. So he probably knew that Burton was military. So that's probably why he was like, right, I got to come really prepared. And the moment Billy Ann shot him, I was like, and he got up again. I was like, shoot, and she shot him again. I was like, go for the head. She's like, the next shot is going to go to your head. I was like, oh, please. Because I was about to say, like, he needs to die. That sequence was crazy because I wasn't scared for Flynn or Burton, but I was scared for Billy Ann. I was like, please don't let Billy Ann die. But they ended up having to call Tommy in. So I was like, yeah, I was like, well, you are close enough to town. It would have been easier just to kill him, but I guess it's like that would have you had to do the whole disposing of body thing, which immediately, like, oh, Tommy figured it out. He's like, oh, like, we could have just ended the loop here, but we called you. And Tommy's like, yeah, but if there was a dead body on a bridge, Homeland Security would have been here. So dealing with them versus dealing with just some cop who's going to, like, no dead bodies, not as much of an issue. I arrest the guy and move on and not asking too many questions. I was like, because Tommy's not an idiot. But also, like, Flynn doesn't want to get him involved. It's like, she told Billy Ann because she needed to talk to somebody outside of her brother about all this. Because the rest of the squad, I'm still not even sure if the rest of the squad knows. I know he told Connor. I don't remember if the rest of the squad knows. They have to because we haven't had those conversations come up. But, well, no, because, like, Leon's in the dark. So I think the rest of the squad is in the dark because Leon didn't know, like, oh, I won the lottery. It's like they never told him, like, oh, yeah, that was the future. We needed to make it seem like we got that money some other way. That it was just like we needed the money because the money was being sent to us. But I had to just make it seem like, oh, you just dumb luck won the lottery. So, and I thought it was interesting when Tommy told that story where he was like, oh yeah, like, my first memory of you, Flynn, 3rd grade, you released all those earthworms because you couldn't bring it in yourself to, like, let the 5th graders, like, dissect them. And he's like, and my uncle has this thing about onions and I was like, oh, like, humans being like onions. I'm like, oh, I was like, at first I legitimately stopped. I was like, are you quoting Shrek here? Did your uncle steal this from Shrek? But basically, it's like, right, every year, that layer of an onion grows another layer and another layer. But no matter how many layers have grown, who you are, that girl you were, that memory I have of you from 3rd grade, that same girl is who you are. And there's part of me wants to protect her. You just got to let me know what's what. But yeah, she knows the moment Tommy's involved, he's going to want to be involved and he can easily get killed and she cares too much about him. It's like, right, she's already kind of got Billy Ann mixed up in this. She doesn't want, because now inadvertently she didn't mean to bring Billy Ann into it, but like Billy Ann just being a good person ended up inadvertently getting involved. I mean, that's why, I guess because of his own daughter and everything too, it's like, I don't want collateral damage in this situation. I'm after my targets and I'm not trying to, like, cause any more trouble, like making other people disappear. So either he saw too much of his own daughter when he saw Billy Ann, that's what crossed his mind, or just like, it might just be the professionalism of, yeah, I'm not killing extra people if I don't have to. So either way. And what I thought was so interesting too is, like, Bob's in the back of the truck and he's so smug. He's smiling, being like, yeah. Like, I was like, what's going to go on? Like, why are you so smug? Why do you act like everything is okay? And it's like, well, because I guess they must have let him know that there was a contingency plan. Because later on, he said, Tommy, it's like, hey, you got 2 choices. You can take me, get me printed and all that stuff. It's fine. People I work for, I don't know if he's talking about the future people, the research institute, or he's just talking about his own line of work. They will find me and they will kill me, and they'll kill you because you're a loose end, especially because you and me have been sitting in this car talking and they pretty much figure would talk to you. So yeah, you're a loose end. Or you can take the 2.5 million I got as a 25% up front to the 10 million they're going to pay me. You can take that and you can just let me go. But Tommy wasn't going to do that, especially if you're going after Flynn. It's like, no, that's bullshit. You know, he was not going to take that money. So, but yeah, he gets sideswiped and notices. I mean, he already had an interaction with the invisible car, so he knows like, yo, something's up. Like, the fact is that the car showed up, because I figured Tommy wasn't going to die either, because they made a point of him noticing the person's shoes. So he's going to be the one that, like, because he never saw their body, but he did see their very distinct shoes. So, like, Tommy's going to be a witness to be like, yo, you're the one that helped Robert escape. Now, and when Robert gets taken away, are they going to kill Robert somewhere, pump him for information, or are they going to like send him back out to do what he was? Because I guess I was like, they could have killed Tommy, but it's like, Trumbull police officer draws too much attention, so we're going to leave that be. So there's that. There's the conversation between Billy Ann, Flynn, and Burton, because Burton doesn't want to have those future conversations in front of Billy Ann. Yeah, she knows what's what, but it's like, yeah, it's not you I have to be cautious about. But she's like, yo, you insulting my husband Jasper, you're insulting me. And it's like, well, the sad thing is, she confronted Jasper about the money. Side note, I should also, just world building thing, I love that there's toothpaste gum. I mean, there might be some form of that here, but I wonder, is that like the legitimate replacement for like brushing your teeth? It's just like, nah, it's 100% toothpaste gum. I'm sure there might be gum that's gum isn't supposed to be a substitute for like brushing your teeth, but I guess they were like, well, it freshens your breath and it makes it easier. I wonder, do you even have to spit it out? I mean, you're supposed to spit gum out anyway, but like most people end up swallowing it. I mean, it wouldn't kill you to swallow like toothpaste or anything, but I'm like, I wonder, how does that work? Like, would you have to wash your mouth out? Probably not. It's probably just like chewing gum, like how it like, freshens your breath. It probably just like, sends little enzymes or something there to eat the bacteria off the stains off your teeth or something. I don't know. Just kind of an interesting little thing. I just couldn't help but notice. I was like, toothpaste gum. That's so interesting. But she found the money that Jasper got from his uncle, and then it's like, yeah, my uncle gave that to me, no strings attached. I love that she's like, did you ask him what he wanted? He's like, yeah, I did. I'm not a fucking idiot. I'm like, that's so sad, because you took the money without thinking about it coming with, like, that's the thing. Like, Billy Ann immediately is like, no, nothing in this world is for free. There's always going to be like something else behind that. There's always going to be a favor behind it. And Jasper sadly took the money, and it's like, he can't give it back now, because even if he does, it doesn't matter. Like, no, the money's yours, and so it's a deal of mine. So he had to lie to Billy Ann and be like, yeah, we got it for free. And she's like, all right, well, we'll keep the money. And it's like, So Burton's right to not trust your hubby, because he made a mistake like that. So also, it's like, well, his uncle's the vicious monster that he is, so he kind of can't really say no. He can't really say no to his uncle, because his uncle seems like to be the only family he's got left. So either way, so there's all of that. Then there's the whole situation with their mom asking a whole bunch of questions. So they ended up filling her in. It's like, wait, medication for the future? It's like, yeah. Which I love that, mom came with the advice this episode. She was like, well, what if I stop taking this medicine? Like, what's going to be the effect? It's like, well, we don't know. And it's like, well, what if you stop paying Corbell? Like, what's going to happen there? And it's like, she's like, the fact is, these people have you by the balls. Like, you are coming from the vantage of looking weak. And what's going to happen? What are they going to think when they think, like, look at you and see you're weak? They know they can take advantage of you. They can do whatever they want. So for her, it's like, you got to make some moves to appear strong. We got to like take the advantage. I was like, wow, mom's got to like, she's like, yeah, I'm putting everything aside from like, I guess I got to sit with this future shit for a while to kind of like solidify my mind around that. But everything else, it's like, she's got a mind for this. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I guess that's kind of where like Flynn and Burton kind of get it from, is their mom. But just like the casualness in which she had that conversation with him. And so once again, she's still like, hey, I'm trying to chew on everything else, the future stuff, but this is how I see this. Like, you keep taking from these people. Yeah, they don't want anything now, but it's very much like the thing between Corbell and Jasper. It's like, yeah, they keep giving you stuff, not making you realize that they're going to come digging in your pocket, like, because they feel like they own you and they can do whatever. So And Flynn ends up going to visit Wilf and tells him, like, yeah, you're supposed to have our back. Future knowledge and all that shit didn't mean anything because you couldn't stop the person coming after us. Because even Flynn's like, what went down on the bridge could have gone severely bad. So it's like, yeah, you didn't see that coming. And apparently you, even with future knowledge, you still didn't know it happened because I'm telling you this now and only now do you, wait, you got attacked on what happened, you know? So, and Flynn asked him these interesting questions where she's like, about the haptic drift and everything, which he was like, the what? Because he doesn't know about haptic drift because that technology is something that the Research Institute made and it's sent back in time. So like the haptic stuff shouldn't even exist. So it probably doesn't even really exist present day for like the general public. That might just be like a very specific Research Institute project, maybe. So like maybe it's super tight-lipped about that. Or he could have been lying because she was like, right, what if, did you use like that, the haptic drift of me kind of, is that why you linked up with me is because you wanted me to feel a certain way towards you so you could use me? And she's like, because I'm starting to trust you, Wilf. Is that a bad decision? He's like, no. I was like, I still don't know. Lev, you sure as shit can't trust. He's a means to an end. But even Wilf is all in this for Alita's sake. But we have no idea when the chips are down. Will he end up choosing like Lev and Alita over you and your family? So she wants to see and meet Charisse because it's like, yo, I gotta make a point. I gotta come in with a big stick. I gotta, what president was it? Teddy Roosevelt was like the big, because I remember that from history class. Like, yeah, they kind of separate Teddy from like FDR. Because Teddy was the one that was about a big stick, basically a big show of force to kind of make your enemy back down at least a little bit. Because if you seem bigger, it's almost like trying to like scare off an animal. The whole point is like to be bigger than him. It's like you kind of have to do that. She has to make a big show of force to be like, don't fuck with me and my family. So, which once again, Wilf told that story as I was kind of brought up earlier in the review about how kind of you never know like the massive fallout from the decisions that you make. So he talked about like the neoprims. Basically, it was in the aftermath of like the jackpots. Everyone was still trying to piece themselves back together. He was at a boarding school. Well, the neoprims didn't like the way the New World Order was going about. It's like, yeah, this is corrupt as shit. Well, let's make a point. They ended up attacking the school he went to. It's like, well, you were just kids. It's like, yeah, but it was a way to get to a message to our parents to kind of bend the will to them. Well, given the opportunity, he took a steak knife, slit the neoprim leader's neck, and then like popped his other people, which is like, oh, that was self-defense. He's like, yes, but self-defense can still be cold-blooded. And basically, he's like, at the time, I just wasn't thinking about the aftermath, what happens afterwards, and the weight of that. And he's like, that's how he met Lev. And it's like, now it put him in this situation where he's kind of indebted to, I think, Lev and stuff. It's like, that's how he met. Because that came up earlier on in the season about, like, Wilf, whether he I think considering him and Alita's, like, upbringing, it's like, they're not just, like, regular people. I think Ash might have made that byproduct of that conversation just because of the family that Wilf came from, but it's like, no, they've grown up on the streets. They know, they've got that, it's kill or be killed, like, in them. They got that, they got that dog in them that, and that's why I'm like, yeah, going as far as she did with Marielle and even using Grace, it's like, it's a means to an end to accomplish what she wants. So Wilf's kind of got that same, once again, dog in him. But I loved the confrontation between Charisse and Flynn, and it's just like because like Charisse has got that like that smug like, oh, I'm better than you, I'm in control the entire time. Because she's like, oh yeah, like, you could try and hurt me, but I'm like, this is a peripheral. And it's like, oh, knowing you, I know people like you in my time, got the money, power, and position. You will most likely bail out of that the moment you feel any slightest pain. But she's like, don't for a second question, like, any pain that I've been through. Like, to be fair, she's lived in this world, and there's probably been a lot that she's going through. So don't assume, like, you know more about pain than I do, so... Because at the end of the day, Flynn was just like, leave me and my family alone. It's like, well, give back what you stole. It's like, what are you talking about? I don't have it. It's like, does Alita have it? She's like, either you're lying or you're just stupidly ignorant to what's going on around you. So, but Flynn was just like, yeah, if I'm going to, or basically was saying like she'll kill her. And she made a, like, put her arms around and like start choking Flynn, and it's like, oh, like you feel the darkness creeping in. I was like, come on, Flynn, get her, get her, get her. I was almost hoping you had one of those sonic punches, because as we know, that hits even through the peripheral, but just because because of the way your brain is connected to all of this. So I figured that would still, well, because the only one that they would have access to, Tommy has as evidence. So it's like, oh, if only they had that on hand. Well, I was like, well, I'm stupid. That wouldn't do her any good in 2032. Having that in 2032 wouldn't do. Well, so having it in general in 2032 would be good. But it's like, I don't know if Lev and them have one or not, because that's probably like Research Institute technology. So I don't know if they'd be able to get access to one or not. But yeah, went toe to toe with Charisse, which she held her own. But Flynn just like, yo, I just want you to know, like, next time I'm coming after you. Snaps her neck and bounces. So Flynn's own little declaration of war. Once again, had to come in with the big stick. We shall see, just like Wilf said, what the weight of the aftermath is going to be, because like you made such a grandstanding thing, that means the Institute is going to come down on you that much harder, and you never know what the trickle effect down the road is going to be. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.